Welcome to How to Live Slow, the podcast where we discuss slow living for the modern woman and help you design an intentionally slower family life. I'm Rachelle Glendon, your personal slow living coach and host of this podcast. I know all about busy, but I love living slow. Enjoy the show. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I hope you're having an amazing start to the year. If you're back at work, I hope it's all going well. And if you're feeling like this might be the year that it really is time to slow down, this is the episode for you. Today, I have a very special guest, a local friend someone who lives in my suburb. Her name is Lana Hall, and she is a psychologist, an author, and a woman on a mission to empower other women to live a meaningful, authentic, and joyous life with full confidence. I'm really excited to introduce you to Lana today because she's written an amazing book called The Slow Life Project. I recently went to her book launch and I've read the book and it is incredible. It talks all about all the things we talk about here on the show about living a slower life, but Lana brings her really unique take on slow living. So she's much less about the aesthetic and all about the approach we take with our mind, because Lana, as I said, she's a psychologist. So she has got lots of incredible tools and resources to get your mind into a slower gear so that you actually live a slow life from the inside out. So many of us struggle, like, for example, with the mental load. It's like that mind chatter that we get up in our heads and it just feels like we can work ourselves into a state of overwhelm. So Lana's book is really brilliant for that. I have referred to it many times since reading it, and there are some really incredible chapters. So excuse me while I fangirl over Lana. I know you're really going to enjoy this episode, and I really highly recommend you check out her book as well. Yeah, like I said, if this is the kind of thing that you're looking at doing this year, definitely check out the other episodes this month, because January is kind of like the prologue of the year. I always find that January is a bit of a time when people aren't really quite ready to start the year. If you're in Australia, you're also on school holidays, or your kids are anyway. And so often we're setting New Year's resolutions, but I wanted to give you a different take on setting New Year's resolutions and have a look at some alternative lifestyle options that you might like to consider so that you can make changes over the long term. So this is kind of like episode 2 of this little mini series of 5 episodes. There's one a week, every week in January on a Wednesday. And I'm really enjoying creating weekly episodes again, so I'm considering doing that moving forward as well. But in any case, I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's meet Lana. So I'm here with Lana today. Hi, Lana. It's so lovely to chat with you. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm going well. Thank you. I loved your book, The Slow Life Project. I think it's such an incredible book. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. So I really need to know, share a little bit about you and how you came to write the book.
Yeah, sure. So my work since about 2009 has been as a psychologist, and long before that was my work, someone who's always been interested in personal development. So having a look at how you can be a bit of a better person and do things kind of in the best way possible. So the concepts for the book originally came out of psychological techniques. So the longer I worked with people, the more I was drawn, I suppose, to clients and also techniques that were more of that kind of personal development focus. And I found that, as well as the techniques being really helpful for the people I was seeing in my office, people who might come in with depression or anxiety and stress, that the techniques were really helpful for myself as well. So I've always had a bit of a thing about it's important to kind of try out the things that you're going to recommend to your clients, because you want to know, do they work? And also, where does it get hard? It's very easy to say something like, oh, do 100 affirmations a day. But then if you actually put that into practice, are you going to do that?
Yeah.
So by sort of testing things out for people, I sort of found the ones I thought worked really well. And then in conversations with family and friends, particularly ones who are interested in personal development, I'd be like, oh, I learned this. And, you can look at this problem that you're having through this perspective. What do you think? And they're like, oh, that's actually really useful. So I sort of got this idea. I'm like, okay, so these psychology techniques, the particular ones I was focusing on are actually helpful for way more people than are ever actually going to show up in a psychologist's office. And so I got really excited by this idea of, okay, I want to write it all down and share it with a wider audience so that lots and lots and lots of people can benefit from this stuff, which is super useful. It's transformed so many people's lives. I use it like literally every day. And so many more people could benefit from this stuff if they knew about it. So that's where I sort of started writing the book.
Yeah, I love that, because like you don't have to be at your very rock bottom to be going to a psychologist to benefit from some of the stuff all of the stuff that you put in the book. Like it's useful for just creating a happier, healthier, more vibrant life, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like the thing that I often like to say to people is it's like going to a personal trainer. You can wait until you're really unfit to go and see a personal trainer and you'll get a lot of benefit. But pretty much anybody is going to benefit from having, those expert techniques and support. So it doesn't really matter where you are. You could always be using this stuff.
Yeah, totally. And so I just want to say, side note, I was looking at your recommended further reading and I was like,
oh yes,
I can see why we've connected, because I've read all of them.
Awesome. I love it. I have to extend it.
Yeah. So that's really cool. But going back to focusing on like the slow life, what does it actually mean to you to live a slow life?
Yeah, good question, because I guess a lot of people have different sort of ideas and interpretations on that. For me, a slow life is all around your mind and what's happening in it. So I guess for me, it's a pretty narrow definition of what slow living is. A lot of people talk about getting back to nature and, being outside more, less tech. Whereas I guess, particularly because I'm a psychologist, my approach is all focused on the mind. And it is about, I guess it's twofold. So it's slowing down enough that you are able to really be present and enjoy the life that you're living. I think that's just so important. If you're rushing and you're not enjoying stuff, like what is the point? So making sure that you're enjoying things as much as you can, but then also slowing down enough to be aware of where are the blocks, what is actually stopping me being present? And again, for me, that's really coming through our mind. A lot of times people are worried about saying no, or their mind, might be really focused on the worst possible outcome of something. And those kinds of things will really block us from being able to enjoy life as well. So slowing down means, paying attention to what's going on in our head, so taking the time to kind of get out of the world and notice what's in our mind so that we can be mindful, enjoy it, but also look at removing those blocks to even more enjoyment, basically.
I 100% agree. It's all of those slow living things of like resting or spending time in the garden and all of that stuff, that's fine, but none of it helps if you've got a busy mind. And and I think conversely as well, if you are mindfully enjoying things, you can live a life that looks quite full from the outside. Like nobody else knows, and this is really important when we start to compare ourselves to other people. Nobody else knows if the person in the garden is truly present and loving it or is still worrying away in the background, and nobody else knows the person whose life looks quite full on the outside. Are they totally stressed and overwhelmed by that, or are they fully loving it because they're there appreciating it? 100%. I totally agree with you, and I love that perspective. So thank you. You do. You just never really know what people are going through. And it's like if you're living a life according to your values, you might be very, on the outside busy, but you chose that, right? Like it's about consciously choosing the way that you're doing things. And I think it's so important to be self-aware and to have that time to slow down and look. That's what we talk about, right? When you're so busy and hustling and working and filling up every gap, like what are you avoiding dealing with?
Yes, definitely. And I think that idea of just distracting yourself through, which you can do, but it's not very satisfying. And I think you miss out
Mm.
on a real gift in that as well, is that if you slow down, pay attention to who you are and learn to appreciate that person, like you get to love being you, So
Yeah.
although it might be challenging to do that, it's well worth the effort to slow down and look at what's really going on for you, tidy it up where you need to, and then you can sort of live this great life where you're able to be present and really enjoy things because you've done the work.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So I actually really loved on that then the values exercise that you had. A big chunk of the book is about figuring out what your values are.
Mm.
And I loved
Yes.
it. You've got a few different techniques, but the one I particularly zoned in on, which I think will relate, particularly at this time of year,
True.
is looking at what you buy as a good indicator for
Mm.
what values you hold highest. So
Yes.
can you explain that a little bit more for everyone?
Yeah. I guess money is a form of energy, as is our time, is our attention. And I guess money, what's good about it is it's a very tangible representation. We can see it and it's easy to measure. So the technique sort of asks people to have a look at, well, what sorts of things do you buy? What do you prioritize buying? It's also limited. So for
Mm,
most of us.
yeah.
So I guess that's useful in terms of you can't buy everything. So the things you do choose to buy are going to say something about who you are. You may not be doing this consciously to begin with. So even, slowing down enough to pay attention to, well, why am I making that choice can be an
Yeah.
interesting thing to do. You may find that there is a real connection to family and tradition if you're buying things that, your mum used to buy, or that, your partner's always eaten it, so you're eating it as well now, kind of thing with thinking food. Some
Yeah.
people are going to choose to buy items that are local or that are environmentally sustainable. And this may be one of those areas where you realize when you start to pay attention to what you're buying that, hey, I say that I really want to support my local community, but then actually I'm buying things in a way that suggests that I don't, and because you have to buy like particularly food and clothes and that kind of thing quite regularly, it can then become a really great way as well, once you know what your values are, to be able to demonstrate that to
Mm,
yourself and to other people, and to actually put this form of energy into these things that you think are important in life. So to begin with,
yeah.
it's just about looking at, well, where am I spending my money? And then again, it's like slowing down, paying attention. Do I actually think those things are important, or do I want to change the way that I'm putting that energy out into the world so that it aligns with the things that I do think are important?
Yeah, such a good way of looking at it, particularly in our consumer-based society, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, and I can really resonate like with that idea of like wanting to support like local makers, but then going, "Oh, the kids have grown and I need to quickly buy them some summer clothes for this weekend coming up," or whatever it is. And going,
Yes.
"Well, you know that you're going to need a little bit more time to go out and source those handmade or those locally made
Mm,
products, not just
yes.
nipping down to the Kmart or Target, which will have what you want pretty much, but it's that easy fix."
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. And I mean, with stuff like that as well, it's really important to start small and focus on
Yeah.
what you're doing, I guess, right, or that you're happy with. If you can
Yeah.
make one choice that better aligns with your values, then that's something to really feel good about.
Yeah.
You really don't want to get caught in the trap of like, oh, I have to do everything in this particular way, because that can be
Yeah.
quite stressful as
Yeah, it's
well.
overwhelming and you just go, bury your head back in the sand. I'm going to ignore that.
Yeah, it's too hard. So yes, I think if you're going to use a values-led buying approach, you want to just pick one value to
Yeah.
focus on, and then you want to look at, okay, what one change can I make first? And then once you're feeling confident and that's working well for you and you're feeling better as a result, then look at what else you want to kind of add in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And do you think that like spending habits in general of like whether you tend to buy cheap products or overspend, stretch your budget too far or impulse buy, do those sorts of things come into play, do you think, in terms of like your values or how you sort of see yourself?
Yeah, they definitely can. And I suppose they're interesting ones. So, yes, if you tend to be a saver, you can do that because thrift is like actually fun to you. Like you want to look at how can I reuse this thing? Like it's a kind of creative process. Some people will love that. Some people will have that pattern because that's what their family told them, or some people will have it because they're really afraid. So, again, it's this idea of like, you've got to slow down enough to know, well, what does it mean for me? I've got this pattern. Is it supporting who I want to be? I suppose another version of that is, okay, I'm not going to spend very much money on my groceries because I want to do this other big, huge, important thing that's in line with my values in the long term. So there's the idea of saving for that as well.
Yeah, I definitely know when I'm feeling the mum guilt, like if I've been working a lot, I'll find myself in the book section of Kmart or something, like buying activity books or like craft things for the kids, because I'm like, I'm actually craving connection time with them. I think that's what I made the link with the book, is like, I'm buying this craft activity because I want to spend time with the kids. That connection is actually, it's interesting. So
yes. And because that's interesting. The first thing that came to my mind is like, if you're buying them educational stuff, is that because you value knowledge, or is it creativity? But for you, the important thing there is the connection.
Yeah. So it's really cool. I really got a lot out of that part of the book. So thank you.
Excellent.
But why is it important to know your values? Because we talk about that a lot on my podcast. I've had some other people bring up values, but also you see it around, and it's just like people might go, well, why does it actually matter?
Yeah. I think it matters for quite a few different reasons. Knowing your values, for a lot of people, it's a great place to start with self-worth, right? So I guess in my definition of a value, I'm saying it's something that you think is important to you. And when you act on it, it feels pretty good. And, if you've lived a day by your values, you've been able to express them, you're going to feel like it was a day well spent. So with that idea in mind, once you've had a chance to identify what are those parts of life that help me to feel that way, you can sort of reflect on the fact that you're living by your values, and then that can give you a sense that like, okay, I'm doing all right at this life thing. If I say creativity is important and I go to the art gallery and support local artists, and then I come home and do some of my own painting, I'm going to feel like that was a day well spent. And then if I am questioning, my worth, or am I good enough at some other point, it's like, well, I support creativity. I'm a creative person. I think that's important. It gives you a framework. I don't think that ultimately people need to have a framework. I think it's good if we could all value ourselves intrinsically just for being alive, but that's a stretch for a lot of us. So let's work with the idea of, as long as I'm showing up in this way, that's a really easy way to allow yourself to feel good. It also then gives like a framework for doing things like making life choices, or deciding what kind of goals you want to have, what kind of friends you want to have as well. So the things that I want to pull into my life. And again, if I know what brings me the greatest meaning and joy and satisfaction, then I can use those things to make my decisions. And that means that over time, my life is going to get more meaningful, more joyous, and more satisfying. So it's a really great way of sort of directing our attention and getting more good feelings in as we go through our lives as well.
Yeah, totally. And I'm instantly thinking, well, it's also a good way to filter out the things that might be a fun decision but actually you don't have capacity for, because it's
yes, and that's super important. Like even in values lists, they're all good qualities. So you have to figure out, okay, they're all good, but which ones are really me? And then once you have that, it's the same kind of thing. Like in our world, we are just bombarded with things that we could be doing, things that we could be learning. Like there is so much more stuff, even places we could be going. Like as travel starts to open up again, very few people are going to visit every country in the world, but they're all there. So having a framework to be able to make choices, it just becomes more and more important. Like if you want to get rid of take down that busyness and that overwhelm, it's such a good way to do it.
Yeah, such a good point. So how do you stick to those values when the going gets tough? Like I know in the book you said motivation is spelled discipline, which I thought, yes, I get that, because motivation wanes. We all know that. Yeah. So do you want to talk about that? Like, what does that mean? And why is discipline the more important thing to?
I think discipline is more important. I mean, you could also say, yeah, it's the habit of it. If you do want to show up consistently as the person that you are, it's really important to be able to do it when it's not easy to do so. And it's almost like that's the real kind of test as to whether or not you are living by that particular value or not. So, it's really easy to be kind to people who are being kind back, who are already being kind to us, sorry. But I think the real challenge in terms of are you a kind person is, can you actually show up with kindness when it's more challenging for you to do so? And I doubt I'm going to feel particularly motivated to be kind to someone. Like, to me, that would be quite an act of discipline. I have to be aware of, okay, who do I want to be in this moment, and how do I want to show up? And I'm going to use that to not react to the situation, but to respond to it. So there's a bit more kind of hard work involved with that, but the payoff is that at the end of the day, I get to look back and feel so good about the choice that I made. Yeah, I guess, motivation is fun and it can be there. It's great when it's there. It makes things so much easier. But I really feel I think about it like an emotion. It comes and it goes. And sometimes we kind of know why, and other times we have no idea why it's there. So if we want to do our best to be the fullest version and live by our values most consistently, motivation is just not going to cut it for us. We need something that's more consistent. And I guess something else I'm often talking to people about is the idea that things that are easy in the moment, often the consequences of those are not so great, but the things that are more challenging in the moment do produce great long-term consequences for us. And I guess that's the essence of something like a discipline or a habit, is that you show up even though it's going to be challenging, but the reward you're getting later on for doing that makes it so worthwhile.
Yeah, the delayed gratification of being the kind of person over the long term. Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
Such a really good point, particularly in this world where like everything is just so available and so ready. Yeah, like, I want that click done by, or,
Yes.
or just that we're so used to seeking comfort and convenience that it can be easy to just solve a problem with the quick thing. But actually, like you said, like over the longer term, that's actually not going to be the most fulfilling option.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
totally agree with that. So thank you for clarifying that. Amazing. What a great chat. Absolutely. I know I could just talk all day about this stuff.
Definitely.
Yes, but we do have to wrap up. So do you want to share with us anything final that you want to add just on before we say goodbye?
Oh, probably just the thing that I mentioned at the start, I think is really important, like as you're sort of hearing about this as a philosophy and things like being disciplined, it can be really easy to get overwhelmed. So if you're looking to make changes in your life, if you want to slow down, if you want to figure out what your values are, look at what you're doing right first. When we focus on what we're doing well, then that allows us to feel confident enough to be able to make some changes. So you always want to start from a place of what did I get right, and then have a look at, okay, what do I want to improve, basically.
Yeah, so good. Look for the evidence. Yeah, such a good point.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing all of that today. I really appreciate it.
No worries. It was so much fun to be on here.
Yeah, I know. This is a long time coming. So do you want to share where we can find you online and any other resources or things? We can obviously leave the links to everything in the show notes, but just for those listening.
Yeah, sure. So probably easiest place to find me is at www.theslowlifeproject.com. That's got all the info about the book and working one-on-one with me about these concepts as well. At Slow Life Project Co. through either Insta or Facebook is the social pages. I do share on there regularly ideas about living by the principles of the Slow Life Project. So if you want to kind of learn more, that's a great place to do so. And in the bios there, you can find a link to download the first chapter of my book for free as well. So if you're interested in learning more specifically about what values are and some starter ideas on how to find yours, then that's a great place to go as well.
Yeah, cool. Actually, I just thought of one thing. I saw that you've got a workbook that goes with the book. Is that only available as digital directly from your website, or is that available
Yeah, it
separately?
is. Yes. It was an afterthought to the book, so I haven't put it through the whole physical book process, but you can buy it as a standalone or in a bundle with a PDF copy of the book as well. And that does contain exercises for each and every chapter, so you can take the work as deep as you need to, and you can take your time with it. As I said, we want to just start small, and so there's plenty of goodness for people to work through over a period of time in that one.
I highly recommend that option. I think it's brilliant, and happy to recommend that everybody support you and access these amazing tools. So thanks again for sharing. I really appreciate it. I'll speak to you soon.
Lovely.
That's it for another episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you'd like to connect further, the show notes from today's episode, including all the social links and free resources, are over on my website, howtoliveslow.com/podcast. Have a beautiful week ahead, and I'll speak with you again soon.